You wake up. Before you even leave your bed, you are exposed to opinions, comments, messages, headlines, disagreements, criticism from strangers you've never met. Never in human history have we been this exposed to judgment, and yet we wonder why we feel irritated, triggered, drained. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The world did not suddenly become more disrespectful. You simply lost your mental immunity. Marcus Aurelius ruled during war, betrayal, political attacks, and public criticism. Yet he reminded himself daily, choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. That is not denial, it is discipline. Offense is not automatic, it is interpretation, and interpretation can be trained. If every comment disturbs you, if every disagreement feels personal, if every criticism lingers longer than it should, you are not weak, you are unprotected. And Stoicism builds protection. Age of chronic offense. We live in an environment of constant exposure. In the past, criticism came from a small circle. Today it comes from everywhere. Social media, workplace hierarchies, group chats, news cycles, online strangers. Your nervous system was not designed for this volume of opinion, and when exposure increases, sensitivity increases. Not because you are fragile, because you are overloaded. Offense becomes chronic when the mind is constantly scanning for threat. A comment becomes disrespect. A neutral tone becomes hostility. A disagreement becomes rejection. And slowly the world feels aggressive. But here is the key insight. Chronic offense is not strength. It is exhaustion. The Stoics understood something profound. You cannot control exposure, but you can control interpretation. If you attempt to control the world, you will remain irritated. If you strengthen your interpretation, you regain peace. Mental immunity is not about hiding from criticism. It is about reducing unnecessary internal damage. And the first step is recognizing this. You are not constantly attacked. You are constantly interpreting the ego alarm system. Offense does not begin with words. It begins with identity. The moment you feel offended, something inside you is sounding an alarm. This threatens me. This disrespects me. This makes me look small. But what exactly is being threatened? Not your safety, not your survival, your self-image. The Stoics understood that the ego behaves like an alarm system. Its job is to protect identity, your sense of who you believe you are. And like any alarm system, it is sensitive, sometimes too sensitive. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A disagreement feels like disrespect. A correction feels like humiliation. Not because these things are objectively harmful, but because they conflict with how we want to be seen. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by the opinions we attach to them. The ego provides those opinions instantly. This shouldn't happen to me. They shouldn't speak to me like that. I deserve better. The alarm rings, emotion follows. But here is the crucial realization. An alarm is not proof of danger. It is a signal to investigate. Stoicism trains you to pause when the ego sounds the alarm and ask, is this truly harm, or is this wounded pride? That question alone weakens offense, because once you question the alarm, you regain distance, and distance restores clarity. The emotional infection model. Let's make this practical. Offense spreads in 4 steps. Step 1, exposure. Someone says something, posts something, looks at you a certain way. Step 2, interpretation. You assign meaning. They meant to disrespect me. They're attacking me. They're undermining me. Step 3, emotional reaction, anger, irritation, embarrassment, resentment. Step 4, behavioral response. You defend, withdraw, escalate, replay it in your mind for hours. That is the full infection cycle. Notice something critical. The only step fully under your control is interpretation. Exposure is inevitable. Emotion is natural. Behavior often follows momentum, but interpretation is the gateway. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to strip events down to their simplest form. It is just a sound. It is just words. It is just someone's opinion. He removed the added narrative. When you remove the narrative, the emotional charge weakens. Offense feels powerful because interpretation feels automatic. But automatic is not permanent. Stoicism strengthens interpretation like an immune system. When the meaning assigned is weaker, the emotional response is weaker. And when the emotional response is weaker, the behavior changes. Mental immunity begins at the level of meaning. Why offense feels so real? Your brain thinks it's survival. If offense feels automatic, there is a reason. Your brain treats social threat like physical threat. Rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Criticism triggers the same stress response as danger. Disapproval can activate the same fight or flight reaction as a real threat. Your nervous system is trying to protect you. Thousands of years ago, social rejection could mean exile. Exile could mean death, so your brain evolved to treat social tension as survival risk. Today, a comment section triggers the same ancient alarm system. Your biology hasn't updated, but your environment has. The Stoics did not know neuroscience, but they understood its effects. They knew the first reaction is involuntary. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the initial impression is not the final judgment. The first emotional surge is biology. The second reaction is choice. This distinction is liberating. You are not weak for feeling offense. You are human, but you are responsible for what happens next. Mental immunity begins when you stop confusing the first reaction with the final decision. The Stoic vaccine, the discipline of interpretation. If offense is the infection, interpretation is the immune system. The Stoics trained this skill deliberately. Epictetus taught a simple but radical idea. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. This means every emotional disturbance begins as a sentence in your mind. They disrespected me. They embarrassed me. They don't value me. These sentences feel automatic, but they are interpretations and not facts, and interpretations can be rewritten. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. When faced with criticism or insult, he would mentally strip the event down to its simplest form. Someone spoke words. That is all. Without added meaning, the emotional charge weakens. This is the Stoic vaccine. Before emotion spreads, question the interpretation. What actually happened? What story am I adding? Is this harm or perception? The goal is not denial, it is accuracy. Because when interpretation becomes disciplined, offense loses momentum. And when offense loses momentum, peace becomes stable. Offense versus information, turning criticism into data. One of the biggest shifts Stoicism teaches is this. Most things that offend you can be used. Instead of asking, why did they say that? Ask, is there information here? Criticism often contains data. Disagreement contains perspective. Rejection contains direction. But offense blocks analysis. When you feel attacked, you defend. When you defend, you stop listening. When you stop listening, you lose information. The Stoic does the opposite. He separates tone from content. Even poorly delivered criticism may contain useful truth. Even unfair comments may reveal perception. Even rejection may reveal misalignment. Seneca wrote that wise people learn from everyone, even fools, not because fools are correct, because information exists everywhere. When you stop taking criticism personally, you start using it strategically. Emotion closes the door. Curiosity opens it. This is mental immunity in practice. Instead of absorbing emotional damage, you extract practical insight. Emotional minimalism. Not everything deserves your energy. One of the greatest sources of unnecessary suffering is this belief. Everything deserves a reaction. It doesn't. Every day you are exposed to hundreds of potential emotional triggers, comments, opinions, disagreements, misunderstandings, minor disrespect, trivial conflict. If you react to all of them, your energy dissolves into noise. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, you always have the option of having no opinion. This is emotional minimalism, not apathy, not indifference, selective engagement. The Stoic asks, does this matter in a week, in a year, in 10 years? Most provocations fail this test. When you stop reacting to everything, your emotional energy becomes concentrated. And concentrated energy becomes power. People who react to everything appear unstable. People who react selectively appear grounded. You do not need to respond to every opinion. You do not need to correct every misunderstanding. You do not need to defend every perception. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. The power shift. When offense loses control over you, something remarkable happens when you stop being easily offended. You stop being emotionally predictable. When someone tries to provoke you and nothing happens. When criticism lands and you remain steady. When disagreement appears and you stay composed, the dynamic shifts. The person attempting to disturb you loses leverage, because offense requires participation. If you do not internalize the insult loses force. If you do not accept the interpretation, the meaning dissolves. Epictetus understood this clearly. If someone calls you foolish, either it is true or it is not. If it is true, improve. If it is not, ignore. There is no third option that requires suffering. Mental immunity does not make you indifferent. It makes you internally independent. And internal independence changes how others interact with you. Provocation becomes ineffective. Criticism becomes information. Conflict becomes manageable. The world begins to feel lighter, not because it changed, but because your interpretation did. Mental immunity and personal power. When offense stops controlling your reactions, something deeper emerges. Stability. Your mood stops fluctuating with every interaction. Your confidence stops depending on approval. Your focus stops dissolving into irritation. Energy returns, and energy creates momentum. People begin to notice something subtle. You are harder to provoke, harder to pressure, harder to manipulate. This is not coldness, it is self-command. Seneca believed that the greatest form of freedom is independence from emotional disturbance. Because the person who cannot be easily disturbed cannot be easily controlled. When your emotional state becomes self-governed, your behavior becomes consistent. Consistency builds trust. Trust builds influence. Influence builds power. Mental immunity does not remove challenges. It removes unnecessary suffering. And without constant emotional disturbance, your attention returns to what actually matters: growth, skill, direction, purpose. Your peace is a skill. You cannot control what people say. You cannot control what people think. You cannot control what people post, write, or believe. Exposure is inevitable, but disturbance is optional. Stoicism does not promise a world without criticism, disagreement, or conflict. It promises a mind that can withstand them. Mental immunity is not built in a single decision. It is built through practice, through pausing before reacting, through questioning interpretation, through choosing what deserves energy. The goal is not to feel nothing. The goal is to choose what truly matters. Because when everything stops feeling personal, something powerful happens. Your energy returns. Your clarity sharpens. Your peace stabilizes. You stop reacting to the world and start directing your life, and that is the quiet power Stoicism offers.